The dust of Prospect Hollow clung to everything like a second skin, painting the world in shades of rust and resignation. Eliza Hart stood before the cracked mirror in the boarding house's cramped room, watching as Mrs. May Hernandez, the closest thing she'd had to a mother since her own past, attempted to tame her auburn hair into something befitting a bride. "Hold still, child," May murmured, her weathered hands gentle despite their urgency. "You're wiggling like a caught fish." "Maybe because I feel like one," Eliza replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Through the thin walls, she could hear the town stirring to life, the clatter of wagon wheels, the bray of mules, and somewhere, the tinny notes of a piano from the saloon. It all seemed so ordinary, as if her world wasn't about to end. May's hands stilled. In the mirror, their eyes met May's dark and knowing, Eliza's green and desperate. "Sometimes we do what we must," the older woman said carefully. "Your father's ranch." "I know." The words came out sharper than intended. Eliza softened her tone. "I know what's at stake. The ranch, the water rights, everything Papa built." She didn't add what they both understood without Sheriff Royce Hale's protection. She'd lose it all anyway. The choice was an illusion, as substantial as morning mist over the little Sable Creek. A knock rattled the door. "Miss Hart, the Reverend's asking for you." The voice belonged to young Jonah Pike, the minister's adopted son. Even through the door, she could hear the sympathy in his tone. "Tell him I'll be along directly." May answered for her, then turned back to Eliza. "Listen to me, Mija. You're stronger than you know. Whatever comes, remember that." Eliza nodded, not trusting her voice. The dress, her mother's wedding dress, hastily altered, felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The ivory silk, yellowed with age, whispered accusations with every movement. Outside, Prospect Hollow was putting on its finest show for the wedding of one of its own to the sheriff's nephew. Banners hung across Main Street, and someone had even swept the boardwalk in front of the church. The irony wasn't lost on Eliza. The town that had whispered about her unnatural independence, her refusal to sell the ranch after her father's death, was now celebrating her surrender. The church bells began to toll, bronze voices calling the faithful and the curious alike. Eliza made her way down the boarding house stairs, each step measured and careful. May walked beside her, a steadying presence in black bombazine. "Miss Hart." Reverend Pike waited at the bottom of the stairs, his lined face grave beneath his wide-brimmed hat. Unlike the others, he didn't offer false congratulation. "I've prepared the ceremony as requested, brief and to the point." "Thank you, Reverend." She appreciated his honesty, even as she wondered what he wasn't saying. The good minister had a reputation for knowing more than he told, seeing more than he acknowledged. The walk to the church might have been a death march, except death would have been a mercy. Faces turned to watch their progress, some pitying, some envious, most simply eager for the spectacle. Mrs. Engelman from the general store dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, though whether from emotion or the ever-present dust, Eliza couldn't tell. "Quite the turnout," a deep voice observed from nearby. Eliza glanced sideways to see a stranger leaning against a post outside the livery stable, tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and clothes that spoke of long days in the saddle. He watched the procession with detached interest. A well-worn duster coat hung from his broad shoulders, and a pair of Colts rode low on his hips. Everything about him suggested competence and danger in equal measure. Their eyes met for a brief moment. His were gray as winter storm clouds before May tugged her along. But Eliza felt his gaze follow them, a weight between her shoulder blades. The church loomed ahead, its whitewashed walls glaring in the morning sun. Caleb Hale waited on the steps, preening in a new suit that couldn't disguise his weak chin and cruel mouth. At 25, he had all of his uncle's meanness, but none of his cunning. His pale eyes lit up as he saw her approach. the look of a man about to claim a prize. "Don't you look pretty as a picture?" he drawled, reaching for her hand. Eliza let him take it, fighting the urge to pull away as his palm, damp with sweat, pressed against hers. "Uncle Royce is mighty pleased. Says once we're hitched, we can combine the properties proper-like, make something real impressive out of that little scratch of land your daddy left." That little scratch of land? 400 acres of good grazing, the best water access in the valley, and 3 generations of heart, sweat, and dreams. Eliza bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted copper. "Now, Caleb!" Sheriff Hale's voice boomed as he appeared from inside the church, where his nephew was soft and obvious. Royce Hale was all sharp edges and calculated charm. His badge caught the light as he descended the steps, and his hand rested casually on the peacemaker at his hip. "Let's not talk business on such a happy day. Plenty of time for that after." He smiled at Eliza, and she fought not to shudder. "Miss Hart, you're doing the right thing. Your father would be proud to see his daughter making such a sensible choice." Her father would have shot Royce Hale on sight if he'd known the man's true nature. But dead men couldn't protect their daughters, and the law such as it was in Prospect Hollow belonged to whoever wore the badge. "Shall we go in?" the Reverend suggested, his quiet voice cutting through the tension. "The congregation is waiting." The church interior was stifling despite the early hour. Bodies packed the pews, fans fluttering like trapped birds. Eliza recognized most faces ranchers who'd given up the fight, miners who owed their jobs to Hale's silent partnership in the Bonanza mine, townspeople who'd learned it was easier to bend than break. At the back, she spotted the stranger from the street. He'd removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and a face that might have been handsome if it weren't so carefully expressionless. He sat alone, those storm-gray eyes taking in everything. The organ wheezed to life, playing a fumbling version of the wedding march. May squeezed Eliza's hand once before taking her seat. Then there was nothing left but the long walk down the aisle, Caleb's eager face waiting at the altar, and the Reverend's worn Bible open to the marriage service. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Pike began, his voice carrying despite its softness. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Caleb James Hale and Elizabeth Grace Hart." Elizabeth, no one called her that except in official documents. She was Eliza to everyone who mattered, named for her grandmother who'd come west in a covered wagon and carved out a life with nothing but determination and a sharp's rifle. The words of the ceremony flowed over her like water over stone. She made the responses when prompted, her voice steady even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Caleb's hand was clammy in hers, and his breath smelled of last night's whiskey, poorly masked with peppermint. "If anyone here present knows of any impediment to this marriage," the Reverend continued, and something in his pause made Eliza look up. His eyes were on the congregation, lingering perhaps a moment too long on the stranger in the back. "Let them speak now or forever hold their peace." Silence stretched like taffy. Someone coughed. A baby fussed and was quickly hushed. Eliza found herself holding her breath, waiting for what? A miracle divine intervention. Nothing came. Then, by the power vested in me, the church door slammed open with a bang that echoed like a gunshot. Every head turned. Young Ephraim Doyle stood silhouetted in the doorway, the mine foreman's face flushed with excitement and exertion. "Sheriff, we got trouble at the mine. Cave in on the lower level. They're saying at least 10 men trapped." The congregation erupted. Women cried out names of husbands, sons, brothers. Men pushed toward the door. In the chaos, Eliza felt Caleb's grip loosen as he turned to his uncle. "We have to go," Sheriff Hale declared, already moving. "Reverend, we'll have to finish this later. Caleb, round up every man with a strong back. Doyle, how bad is it?" As the men hurried out, arguing about rescue plans and equipment, Eliza stood frozen at the altar. The church emptied around her like water from a broken dam, leaving only the women, the elderly, and that stranger who still sat unmoved in his pew. May appeared at her elbow. "Come, Mia, we should—" "No." The word surprised Eliza as much as anyone. She looked down at her mother's dress, at the bouquet of sage and wildflowers wilting in her hands. "No, I think I'll stay here a moment to pray for those poor miners." May studied her face, then nodded slowly. "I'll wait outside." As the church quieted, Eliza sank into the front pew. Her legs trembled with reaction, with relief, with fear of what came next. The reprieve was temporary. Caleb would return. The ceremony would continue, but for now, for this moment, she could breathe. Hell of a thing, interrupting a wedding like that. She startled. The stranger had moved silent as a shadow to stand in the aisle beside her. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the kind that came from squinting into too many suns. "Those miners," Eliza said carefully. "It's dangerous work. Most things worth doing are—" He studied her with those gray eyes. "Seeing too much." "Cole Arden, I've got a spread about a day's ride north. Came to town for horse stock. Stayed for the show." "I wasn't aware I was providing entertainment. Mr. Arden." A smile ghosted across his features, there and gone like lightning. "No, ma'am, I don't reckon you were." He glanced toward the altar, then back to her. "Though I'd say that cave-in had mighty convenient timing." The implication hung in the air between them. Eliza knew she should be offended, should defend her almost husband and his family. Instead, she found herself fighting an inappropriate urge to laugh. "Accidents happen," she said finally. "That they do." He touched the brim of his hat. "I'll be in town a few days. If you need anything." Sometimes a person finds themselves in need of options. He was gone before she could respond, leaving only the lingering scent of leather and distant places. Eliza sat alone in the empty church, surrounded by dying flowers and abandoned prayers, and wondered if she'd just been thrown a lifeline or shown a different kind of trap. Outside, she could hear the town mobilizing for the rescue effort. Soon enough, they'd remember the interrupted wedding. Soon enough, Caleb would return to claim what he considered his. But for now, Eliza Hart sat in the quiet church and dared to think the unthinkable. What if she didn't wait for them to come back? What if, for once in her life, she chose a different direction? The thought terrified her. It also, for the first time in months, made her feel alive. The rescue effort at the mine stretched through the afternoon and into evening. From her window at the boarding house, Eliza watched lanterns bloom like fireflies as more men arrived to help. The wedding dress lay across her bed like a shed skin, and she sat in her chemise and petticoat, May's shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "You should eat something," May said from the doorway, carrying a tray with bread and soup. "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." The older woman set the tray on the small table. Caleb sent word. "They've pulled 7 men out alive. Still working on the others. He says to be ready tomorrow morning. First light." "First light. Less than 12 hours of freedom left." Eliza pulled the shawl tighter. "Of course he does." May sat on the bed, her face troubled. "There's something else. That stranger, Mr. Arden. He's been asking questions around town about water rights, property laws. Folks are getting nervous." Despite everything, Eliza felt a spark of interest. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that makes Sheriff Hale send Doyle to have a quiet word. Only Mr. Arden didn't seem inclined to listen. Last I heard, he was in the saloon, buying drinks and letting folks talk." A commotion in the street below drew them to the window. By the light of torches, they could see men carrying a covered form on a stretcher. Another miner who wouldn't see sunrise. The crowd parted respectfully, hats removed, heads bowed. 10 years ago, May said quietly, that mine was just a hole in the ground and a drunk's wild dream. Now look at it, swallowing men whole, making a few rich while the rest. She trailed off, but Eliza heard what went unsaid. Her father had refused to sell water rights to the mine's expansion. 6 months later, he was dead, thrown from a horse that had never spooked before. "I should go to bed," Eliza said, "early morning and all." May studied her with those knowing eyes. "Your mama's jewelry box is in my room, the one with the false bottom. Just so you know where it is, in case you need anything in the night." After May left, Eliza sat in the darkness, listening to the town slowly quiet. The saloon stayed rowdy celebration for the living, wake for the dead. Somewhere a dog barked. A baby cried and was soothed. Normal sounds of life continuing, oblivious to one woman's private catastrophe. She dozed fitfully in the chair, starting awake when the courthouse clock struck midnight. Through her window, Main Street lay empty except for a few drunks making their unsteady way home. This was her world, all she'd ever known. 22 years inside the boundaries of Prospect Hollow and her father's ranch. 22 years of being told what a proper young lady should and shouldn't do. Her father had tried to raise her different, taught her to shoot, to ride, to read contracts and keep books. "You're a heart," he'd say. "We don't bend knee to anyone." But he was gone, and principles didn't stop bullets or bought judges. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. Too soft to be Caleb, too hesitant to be May. Eliza wrapped the shawl around herself and cracked open the door. Jonah Pike stood in the hallway, fidgeting with his hat. "Miss Hart, I'm sorry to disturb you, but Pa Reverend Pike, he needs to speak with you. Says it's urgent." "Now it's past midnight." "Yes, ma'am, he's in the church. Said to tell you to come quiet-like, out the back way." Every instinct screamed danger. But what did she have to lose? In a few hours, she'd belong to Caleb Hale anyway. "Give me a moment to dress." She pulled on her everyday calico, the one she wore for ranch work, and sturdy boots, the wedding dress she left on the bed like a prophecy. Jonah led her through dark streets, keeping to shadows. The church sat dark except for a single candle burning in the vestry window. Reverend Pike waited inside, but he wasn't alone. Cole Arden sat in a front pew, hat beside him, looking as comfortable as if midnight church meetings were commonplace. "Miss Hart," the Reverend's voice was grave. "Forgive the unusual hour, but some matters can't wait for daylight. Mr. Arden has brought something to my attention, something that concerns you directly." Eliza kept her distance, eyeing both men warily. "If this is some scheme—" "No scheme," Cole interrupted. His voice was quiet, but carried authority. "Just truth that's been buried longer than those miners. Your father didn't die in an accident. Miss Hart." The words hit like cold water. Everyone knows that. But knowing and proving are different things in Hale's town. "What if I told you there was proof a witness who's been too scared to speak?" "I'd say, why now, why tonight?" Cole stood, moving with that same dangerous grace she'd noticed earlier. "Because tomorrow you'll be married to Caleb Hale, and once you are, any claim you have to your father's property becomes his, including something Sheriff Hale wants very badly. The original water rights grant that proves the Little Sable's flow belongs to the Hart Ranch. Not the town, not the mine. That's impossible. Those papers were lost when the old courthouse burned." Reverend Pike cleared his throat. "Not lost, hidden. Your father brought them to me months before he died. He suspected what was coming." The old minister looked every one of his years. "I should have done something then, but I was afraid. For my congregation, for Jonah, I've been a coward, and I'm sorry for it." "You have them?" Hope and disbelief warred in her chest. "The original papers?" "Not here, somewhere safe. But Miss Hart, having them and using them are different things. Sheriff Hale owns the judge, half the town council. You'd need to take them to the territorial capital, find honest law." "Which brings us to why we're here," Cole said. "You need to leave town tonight, before that wedding turns you into property yourself." Eliza laughed, sharp and bitter. "Leave on foot in my work dress, they'd catch me before I reached the ranch." Not on foot. Cole's smile was grim. I've got horses waiting, good ones, and I know trails Hale's men don't, but it has to be now. Once you're missed, once that wedding doesn't happen, this town's going to explode. You need to be far away when it does. Why? She faced him directly, chin raised. Why do you care what happens to me? He was quiet for a long moment. Maybe because I've seen what men like Hale do to places, to people. Maybe because your father was the only man in this valley who'd sell water to drovers without gouging them. Or maybe... He met her eyes. Maybe because I recognize a fighter when I see one. And you've been fighting alone too long. This is insane. But even as she said it, Eliza felt something shift inside her chest. Fear, yes, but underneath it, a wild hope. I can't just run. The ranch. We'll be seized the moment you're married. Reverend Pike interrupted. But if you're not here, if you can get those papers to honest law, you might save it. Staying means losing everything for certain. Through the window, she could see the eastern sky beginning to lighten. Soon the roosters would crow. Soon May would come to help her dress. Soon Caleb would arrive with his sweaty hands and whiskey breath. Miss Hart. Jonah spoke for the first time, young face earnest. I'll ride with you far as Miller's Creek. Make sure you get clear. I'm good with a rifle now. Mr. Arden's been teaching me. She looked at the three men, the minister wrestling with his conscience, the boy trying to be brave, the stranger offering escape. It was madness, but the alternative. I need to get something from the boarding house, she said finally. Too risky, Cole started. My mother's jewelry, it's all I have of her. I won't leave it for Caleb. He studied her, then nodded. Jonah, go with her. In and out, quick as you can. Meet us at the old mill. And Miss Hart, he tossed her something, a man's duster coat. Might want to wear this, less conspicuous than that dress. The coat smelled of leather and trail dust. It fell nearly to her ankles, but when she put it on, she felt somehow protected, armored against what came next. The trip to the boarding house was torture. Every shadow could hide one of Hale's men. Every sound made her heart race. But the town slept on. Exhausted from the mine rescue, they slipped in the back way, and Eliza grabbed not just the jewelry box, but also her father's Colt .45, the one he'd taught her to shoot with. May sat in the kitchen, fully dressed, as if waiting. She took one look at Eliza in the oversized coat and nodded. The gray mare's in the lean-to out back, saddled and provisioned. She's not much to look at, but she'll run all day. May? Hush, child. You think I didn't see this coming? Think I haven't been watching that wedding dress hang over you like a noose? She pressed a small leather pouch into Eliza's hands. $20 gold. It's not much, but it'll help. Eliza hugged her fierce and quick. They'll blame you. Let 'em. I'm too old and too mean for Royce Hale to bother with. May's eyes glinted. Besides, someone needs to be here to tell everyone how you vanished in the night, spirited away, maybe by that dangerous stranger who's been asking questions. Such a scandal. Despite everything, Eliza smiled. I love you too. The old mill sat on the town's edge, abandoned since the river changed course. Cole waited with 3 horses his own bay, a sturdy paint for Jonah, and a white mare that seemed to glow in the pre-dawn darkness. Change of plans, he said as they approached. Doyle's got men watching the north road. We go south to the river, follow it west into the canyon country. Harder riding, but they won't expect it. Eliza swung up into the saddle, her mother's jewelry box secured in the saddlebags. The colt sat heavy on her hip. Then we'd better ride. They were 5 miles out when they heard the church bell ringing wild and wrong. Not calling to worship, but raising alarm. Eliza imagined the scene, Caleb arriving to find her gone. Sheriff Hale's rage, the town in uproar. No going back now, Cole said. Good. And she meant it. They pushed hard as the sun climbed, following deer trails and dry washes. Behind them, dust clouds marked pursuit. Jonah proved true to his word, steady and watchful. But it was Cole who guided them, choosing paths that seemed impossible until they weren't. By noon, they'd reached Skeleton Ridge, where the land fell away in a maze of canyons. They paused to rest the horses and drink warm water from canteens. Far below, the little sable wound silver through the valley, the water everyone fought over. The reason her father died. "They're gaining," Jonah observed, studying their back trail. Cole nodded. "Time to get creative. Miss Hart, how's your riding?" "Good enough. Better be more than good enough." He pointed to a narrow trail switchbacking down the cliff face. "That leads to water. Also leads to a box canyon if you don't know the way out, which I do, and they don't." She understood. A trap. Risk everything on his knowledge and her nerve. Looking back at the approaching dust, at the life she was leaving, Eliza made her choice. "Lead on, Mr. Arden." The descent was terrifying. Shale slipped under hooves. The trail narrowed until her stirrup scraped stone. Below, the canyon floor looked impossibly far. But the white mare Juniper, she decided to call her, proved sure-footed and brave. They'd just reached bottom when riders appeared on the rim above. Eliza recognized Doyle's bulk, Caleb's slight figure. Shouts echoed off canyon walls. "This way." Cole spurred toward what looked like solid rock. At the last moment, a cleft appeared barely wide enough for horses' single file. They plunged through into deeper shadow, following the hidden path as bullets whined overhead. The passage opened onto a wider canyon with a clear stream. Cole didn't pause, leading them upstream through knee-deep water to hide their tracks. Behind them, they could hear Doyle's men arguing about following, about ambush. Finally, as afternoon shadows grew long, they emerged onto a high meadow. The horses were lathered, exhausted. Eliza's legs trembled when she dismounted. But they were alive, free. "There's a line shack about 2 miles on." Cole said, "We can rest there, plan next moves." "They'll keep coming." Eliza stated the obvious. "Let them. By the time they figure out that canyon maze, we'll be long gone." He studied her, and something in his expression softened. "You did good back there. Your father would be proud." "You knew him?" "Met him once. Good man. Honest." Cole's jaw tightened. "Didn't deserve what happened." As they rode toward shelter and whatever came next, Eliza realized the sun was setting on more than just this day. Her old life was behind her now, lost in that twisting canyon along with her wedding dress and proper reputation. But riding beside this dangerous stranger, wearing his coat like armor, her father's gun on her hip and hope in her heart, she felt more herself than she had in months. She was a heart. They didn't bend knee to anyone. And if Sheriff Royce Hale thought different, well, he was about to learn otherwise. The Arden Ranch spread across the valley like a promise kept. After 3 days of hard riding, dodging pursuit through canyon country, Eliza's first glimpse of it took her breath away. Green pastures stretched toward purple mountains, split by a creek that ran clear and strong. The main house sat on a rise, solid and welcoming, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. "Welcome to the AA," Cole said quietly beside her. "It's not much, but it's honest." Not much. Eliza counted at least a dozen buildings, from the main house to barns, bunkhouse, smokehouse, and workshops. Horses grazed in well-fenced pastures. Cattle dotted the hillsides. Everything spoke of careful management and prosperity. "It's beautiful," she said, meaning it. Jonah had left them at Miller's Creek as promised, carrying letters to trusted friends who might help their cause. Now it was just the 2 of them, and Eliza felt suddenly uncertain. What was she doing here? What did Cole Arden expect from her? As if reading her thoughts, he said, "You'll have your own room. Of course. May Hernandez is my housekeeper, yes, the same May from town. She came to work here after her husband died. Small world. Isn't it? Relief flooded through her. May's here. Who do you think told me about a certain wedding that needed interrupting? His smile was brief, but warm. Come on. She's probably watching from the kitchen window, ready to scold me for keeping you out in the dust. Sure enough, May burst from the house before they'd even reached the porch. 3 days. You were supposed to be back in 2. She helped Eliza down from Juniper, clucking over her trail-worn appearance. And look at you, child. Thin as a rail and dusty as a mine shaft. Come inside. Bath first, then food. Then you can tell me everything. May Cole started. Don't you May me, Cole Arden. You can see to the horses while I see to this poor girl. And tell Tom to heat extra water. Lots of it. Eliza let herself be led inside, marveling at the house. It was larger than it appeared from outside, with real glass windows and polished wood floors. Native rugs added warmth. And the furniture, while simple, was well made and comfortable. It was a man's house, but not a lonely one. There were books on shelves, a chest set by the fireplace, even curtains at the windows. Your room's upstairs, May said, climbing the wide staircase. Best view in the house. Cole had me air it out special when he sent word you'd be coming. The room was indeed lovely, with windows facing the mountains and morning sun, a brass bed with a quilted coverlet, a wardrobe, a small writing desk, even a bookshelf with volumes of poetry and history. On the bedside table sat a small vase with wildflowers. This is too much, Eliza protested. Nonsense. You need a safe place to stay while this mess gets sorted. Cole's a good man, the best I know. He'll not ask anything improper of you. May's eyes sharpened. Though I wouldn't blame either of you for noticing what's right in front of your noses. Now, let's get you clean. The bath was heaven. Hot water, real soap, and May's gentle hands working the trail dust from her hair. Eliza nearly fell asleep in the tub, but May kept her talking, drawing out the story of their escape. Brave girl, she said when Eliza described the canyon chase. Your mama would be proud. She had spine, too, came from good stock back in Ohio. Scandalized her family when she married your father and came west. Tell me about her, Eliza asked. Father never talked much about before. May's hands stilled in her hair. She was a teacher, educated. Could have married well back east, but she met your father at a church social when he was visiting relatives. Took one look at that tall cowboy and decided he was worth giving up everything for. They wrote letters for a year before he finally saved enough to send for her. Was she happy out here? I mean, it must have been so different. Happy as I've ever seen two people. She loved the freedom, the space. Loved your father something fierce. When she died, birthing you. May resumed washing. It broke him some, but he loved you double to make up for it. Said you had her eyes and her stubbornness. Clean and dressed in a borrowed wrapper. Eliza sat by the window while May braided her damp hair. Below, she could see Cole talking with his men by the corrals. He'd cleaned up too, traded trail clothes for fresh ones, but still wore that easy authority like a second skin. How long have you known him? She asked. Cole, going on 6 years now. He hired me when I was at my lowest. Gave me work and purpose when I thought I had neither. He's got his shadows, the war left marks on him, but there's no better man in the territory. May tied off the braid. Now, food. Your skin and bones. The kitchen was the heart of the house, with a massive iron stove and a long table scarred from years of use. May had prepared what she called a simple meal venison stew, fresh bread, canned peaches, coffee strong enough to float horseshoes. Eliza ate like she hadn't in days, which was close to truth. Cole joined them as she was finishing. Tom set up targets behind the barn. Thought you might want to keep your hand in with that colt. You want me to practice shooting? Want's got nothing to do with it. Hale won't give up easy. His pride's hurt now, along with his plans. When he comes, and he will come, I want you able to defend yourself." The next morning, Eliza stood behind the barn, facing a row of bottles set on fence posts. The Colt felt familiar in her hand, but it had been months since she'd practiced. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Squeeze, don't jerk. Let the breath out slow." Her first shot went wide. The second clipped a bottle. The third shattered it clean. "Better," Cole said from behind her. "But you're anticipating the recoil. Watch." He drew his own Colt in one smooth motion and fired 3 times. 3 bottles exploded in quick succession. It's not about speed, it's about certainty. Know where you want the bullet to go, then send it there. They practiced every morning after that. Cole was a patient teacher, correcting her stance, her grip, her breathing. Sometimes other ranch hands would stop to watch, offering encouragement. Big Tom, the foreman, even set up moving targets boards on ropes that swayed in the wind. "Why are they all so accepting?" Eliza asked one day. "A woman shooting, wearing trousers, acting like a hand." Cole reloaded his pistol thoughtfully. Most of these men have seen hard times, been judged for things beyond their control. Tom, there, was born into slavery, fought his way west after the war. Pedro lost his ranch to land grabbers. Stan got run out of his hometown for loving the wrong person. Out here, we judge by what a person does, not what they're supposed to be. Between practice sessions, Eliza helped where she could. She had a good head for figures and soon took over the ranch books, freeing Cole for other work. She helped May in the kitchen, learning to cook for a dozen hungry cowboys. She even joined the hands for brandings and roundups, proving she could rope and ride with the best of them. "You're fitting in well," Cole observed one evening. They sat on the porch watching sunset paint the mountains gold. It had become their habit, these quiet moments when the day's work was done. "It feels like home," Eliza admitted, "more than town ever did." "It could be, if you wanted." The words hung between them, weighted with possibility. Over the weeks, something had grown between them, not the desperate passion of dime novels, but something deeper. Shared laughter over meals, comfortable silences, the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way her pulse jumped when his hand accidentally brushed hers. "Cole." "I know." He stared at the mountains. "You're not free to make choices yet. Hale still has claim on you. The ranch is still in jeopardy. I'm not asking for anything you can't give. Just wanted you to know the option exists." Before she could respond, a rider appeared on the road, even at distance. Eliza recognized the slight figure. "Jonah," she breathed. They met him at the gate. The boy was exhausted, his horse lathered. "Miss Eliza, Mr. Arden, I'm sorry to come like this, but there's news, bad news." May appeared with water and food while Jonah told his tale. "Sheriff Hales put out a warrant. Says Miss Eliza stole money from the town treasury, that she's a fugitive. He's got Judge Morrison to sign it all legal-like. There's even a reward, $500. "That's more than most men see in a year," Cole said grimly. "It gets worse. He's claiming the Hart Ranch is forfeit due to criminal acts, plans to auction it next week, and—" Jonah hesitated. "He's been visiting the other small ranchers, making threats. The Hendersons already sold out cheap. Others are thinking about it. He's consolidating power," Eliza said. "With my water rights and the other ranches, he'll control the whole valley." "What about the territorial authorities?" Cole asked. "The papers Reverend Pike has." Pa rode to the Capitol himself, but the governor's assistant said without the original documents in hand, and with a warrant out, there's nothing they can do. Hale's got friends there too. Eliza felt hope crumbling. All this running, hiding, and for what Hale had won simply by controlling the narrative. "There's one more thing," Jonah added reluctantly. "Caleb's been drinking heavy, talking wild, says when he finds you." He couldn't meet her eyes. "Just says things no man should say about a woman." Cole's hand moved to his gun. "Maybe it's time I paid a visit to town." "No." Eliza stood. That's what he wants. You write in there, he'll have you arrested or shot. Either way, I lose. She paced the porch, thinking, we need those papers. If Reverend Pike can't get them to the Capitol, we need to go get them. Ride into Prospect Hollow, that's suicide. Not ride, and not me. She turned to Jonah. How's your father? Is he being watched? But it's Wednesday night prayer meeting, so he's always at church then. Why? A plan formed in her mind, dangerous, possibly foolish, but better than sitting still. Because I think it's time we stopped running and started fighting back. Cole, how many men can you spare? Quiet ones who can follow orders. He studied her, and she saw the moment he understood. 4, maybe 5, Tom for sure, Pedro, couple others. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Hale believes he's won. He's gotten comfortable, sloppy maybe, and a man who's comfortable doesn't watch his back as careful. She smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. May, I'm going to need a dress, something forgettable. And Jonah, tell your father to leave his study window unlocked Wednesday night. We're going to steal back what's mine. That night, as she cleaned the Colt and checked her ammunition, Cole knocked on her door. Come in. He entered but stayed near the doorway. You sure about this once we cross this line? Hale crossed it when he killed my father, when he tried to force me into marriage, when he put a price on my head. She set down the gun. I'm tired of being afraid. Cole, tired of letting him dictate terms. All right then. He moved closer, and for a moment she thought he might touch her. Instead, he pulled something from his pocket, a small silver star. This was mine, from the war. Cavalry scout. Kept me safe through some dark times. Want you to have it? Cole, I can't. Please. He pressed it into her hand. For luck. And so you remember you've got people waiting for you to come home. Their fingers touched, lingered. In the lamplight, his eyes were more silver than gray, and the space between them seemed to shrink. I'll come back, she whispered. You better. His voice was rough. This place is too quiet without you raising hell. After he left, Eliza pinned the star inside her collar, where it rested cool against her skin. Wednesday was 2 days away. 2 days to plan, to prepare, to steel herself for what came next. Looking out at the stars, she thought of her father, her mother, the ranch that was her birthright. Hale had taken so much from her, but he'd made one mistake, he'd left her alive. And now she was coming for him. Not with guns blazing like some dime novel hero, but smart, careful, using his own arrogance against him. She was done being the victim in this story. It was time to write a new ending. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Sheriff Royce Hale stepped onto the Ardennes Ranch property with 6 armed men. Cole met them at the gate, his own hands strategically positioned around the yard. The air crackled with tension thick enough to cut. Arden, Hale said, touching his hat brim with mock courtesy. Fine day for a visit. State your business. Sheriff. Cole's voice was steady as granite. This is private property. Well now, that's what I'm here to discuss. Hale produced a folded paper from his vest. Got a warrant here for one Eliza Hart. Theft of town funds. They say, serious charge. Miss Hart isn't here. No mind if we verify that some folks say they've seen a woman matching her description riding your range. Would be a shame if you were harboring a fugitive. Hale's smile was all teeth, no warmth. That'd make you an accomplice. Behind Cole, Eliza watched from the kitchen window, her hands gripping May's so tight her knuckles went white. They'd known this was coming, but that didn't make it easier. You have a warrant for Miss Hart, not to search my property, Cole said evenly. Unless you've got papers saying otherwise, you and your men can turn around. Ephraim Doyle spat tobacco juice near Cole's boots. Could always get that paper. Judge Morrison's real accommodating these days. I'm sure he is. Cole's hand rested casual on his gun belt. But right now, you've got nothing, so move along. The standoff stretched taut. Eliza counted heartbeats, waiting for violence to explode. But Hale, for all his corruption, wasn't stupid. He knew Cole's men were positioned for crossfire, knew the ranch hands were loyal. A gunfight here would be messy, with no guaranteed winner. You're making a mistake, Arden, Hale said finally. I'm trying to uphold the law. That girl's a thief and worse. When we find her, and we will find her, anyone who helped her will answer for it. Noted. Now get off my land. Hale's eyes swept the ranch buildings, lingering on the kitchen window. For a moment, Eliza thought he'd seen her, but then he turned his horse. This isn't over, not by a long shot. They watched until the riders disappeared in dust. Only then did Cole turn back to the house, his face grim. Pack light, he told Eliza when she met him on the porch. They'll be back with that search warrant by tomorrow. Where will I go? Line shack up on Beaver Creek. It's rough, but it's hidden. Tom will take you tonight after dark. She wanted to protest, to stand and fight, but she knew he was right. Her presence here endangered everyone. What about the plan Wednesday night? Goes ahead as scheduled. I'll meet you at the shack Tuesday night to finalize everything. He paused, something shifting in his expression. Eliza, if this goes bad, it won't. But if it does, promise me you'll ride for Colorado. Tom's got family there who'll help. She lifted her chin. I'm not running anymore. Cole, we get those papers or we die trying. That's what I'm afraid of, he muttered. That night, guided by Tom's sure hand and a sliver of moon, Eliza made her way into the high country. The line shack was exactly as advertised: rough. One room, a narrow bunk, a potbelly stove, and not much else. But it was secure, hidden in a grove of aspens with clear sight lines in all directions. I'll be back tomorrow with supplies, Tom promised. You need anything, there's a signal mirror in that cupboard. 3 flashes means trouble. 2 means all clear. Alone, Eliza built a small fire and tried not to think about how quickly her world had shrunk. From the ranch to this tiny cabin, from hope to desperation, but self-pity was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she checked her weapons, studied the hand-drawn map of Prospect Hollow that Cole had given her, and planned. The next morning brought company not Tom, but Lena Crow, picking her way up the trail on a borrowed mule. Easy there, trigger happy, Lena called when Eliza appeared with the Winchester. It's just your friendly neighborhood saloon keeper bringing supplies and gossip. They sat outside the shack, sharing coffee and biscuits while Lena filled her in on town developments. Hale's getting desperate, she reported. That mine cave-in wasn't no accident. Doyle set those charges wrong on purpose, trying to open a new shaft quick. 10 men dead so Hale could chase more silver. She shook her head. Folks are starting to mutter. Not loud, not yet, but there's anger building. Anger's not enough. We need those papers. About that. Lena glanced around, then leaned closer. Wednesday night's not just prayer meeting. There's a town council session right after. Hale's planning to formally seize your ranch. Put it up for auction Thursday morning. Every councilman will be there. Which means Hale will be occupied, not home. Eliza's mind raced. Lena? His house, does he keep important papers there or at the jail? Both, probably. But here's the interesting part. Caleb's been living there since you ran, drinking himself stupid most nights, ranting about his stolen bride. Her expression darkened. The things he says he'll do when he finds you. Well, let's just say the apple didn't fall far from the tree. They spent the morning refining the plan. Lena would create a distraction at the saloon. Keep Doyle and the deputies occupied. Tom and Pedro would watch the roads. Cole would handle the Reverend's house. And Eliza. You're sure about this? Lena asked. Going into Hale's house is different than sneaking to the church. That's the wolf's own den. He took everything from me, Eliza said quietly. My father, my home, my freedom. Yes, I'm sure. Cole arrived Tuesday night as promised, bringing news and fresh supplies. They sat by the fire, going over every detail one more time. Jonah confirmed the study window will be open. He said, the papers are in a lockbox hidden behind a false panel in the bookshelf. Third shelf, behind the hymnal collection. And Hale's house. Caleb usually passes out by 10. The housekeeper leaves at 8. There's a back entrance through the kitchen that's only got a simple lock. He pulled out a slim piece of metal. This should open it. Tom taught me the trick years ago. Eliza turned the lockpick over in her fingers. Such a small thing to hold so much possibility. And if Caleb's not passed out? Cole's jaw tightened. Then you get out. No heroics, no confrontations. The papers at the Reverend's are what matter most. They went over routes, timing, contingencies until the fire burned low. Finally, Cole stood to leave. I should get back. Early start tomorrow. Cole. She stood too, suddenly reluctant to let him go. After this is over, assuming we survive what then? He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the firelight reflected in his eyes. Then you're free to rebuild your ranch, to stay here, to go wherever you want. Your choice, not anyone else's. And if I chose to stay here, I mean, at the AA. His hand came up to cup her cheek, calloused thumb brushing her skin light as a whisper. Then I'd spend every day trying to deserve that choice. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, balanced on the edge of something. Then Cole stepped back, putting distance between them like armor. Wednesday night, he said roughly. Be careful, Eliza. After he left, she touched her cheek where his hand had been, feeling the phantom warmth. One more day, one more night. Then everything would change, one way or another. Wednesday came overcast and oppressive, clouds building over the mountains like a promise of storm. Eliza dressed carefully in the plain brown dress May had provided, pinning her hair severely back. She looked like any ranch woman come to town for supplies forgettable, invisible. The ride-in was nerve-wracking. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every rider might recognize her. But luck or providence held, and she reached the outskirts as dusk fell. She met Cole behind the old livery stable, both of them tense as drawn wire. Lena's already started her distraction, he reported. Half the deputies are at the saloon breaking up a fight between drovers. Council meeting starts in 20 minutes. Then let's go. They split up at the church. Cole headed for the Reverend's house while Eliza ghosted through back alleys toward the sheriff's residence. The house sat on the best lot in town. 2 stories of smug prosperity built on others' misery. The kitchen door opened just as Cole had promised. Inside, the house smelled of leather and tobacco and something else neglect. Dirty dishes filled the sink. Empty bottles littered the parlor. Caleb's housekeeping clearly didn't match his uncle's standards. She found him in the front room, slumped in a chair with a half-empty whiskey bottle. For a moment, she stood in the doorway, looking at the man she'd almost married. Weak chin slack in sleep. Soft hands that had never known real work. Clothes that cost more than most families saw in a year. This was what Hale had chosen for her. This was supposed to be her future. Moving past him, she climbed the stairs to Hale's study. The door was locked, but the pick worked here too. Inside, papers covered every surface, land deeds, contracts, correspondence. Too much to search properly. But there a locked drawer in the desk that practically screamed importance. The pick was halfway in the lock when she heard it. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, stumbling. Caleb. She froze, calculating distances. Too far from the window. Nowhere to hide except there. A tall wardrobe in the corner. She slipped inside just as the door opened. Uncle, Caleb's voice was slurred, confused. Thought you were at the meeting. He stumbled into the room, knocking papers off a side table. Through the wardrobe crack, she watched him weave toward the desk. Her heart hammered so loud she was sure he'd hear. Then his eyes focused on something. The lockpick. She'd left it in the drawer. "What the hell?" He pulled it free, staring stupidly. Then his face twisted. "Eliza, that witch is here somewhere." He spun around, nearly falling. "Come out, I know you're here." She held her breath, hand moving to the Colt at her hip. If he opened the wardrobe... But whiskey and rage made him stupid. He crashed around the room, throwing papers, cursing her name. Finally, he staggered back downstairs, shouting for servants who weren't there. Eliza waited 5 hammering heartbeats, then slipped out. No time for finesse now. She yanked the drawer open, locked still, but the wood was weak. Inside, a leather portfolio. She grabbed it and ran. Down the stairs, through the kitchen, out into the night, behind her. Caleb's shouts grew louder. Lights appeared in windows. She'd woken the neighborhood. At the church, Cole waited with 2 horses and a grim expression. "Heard the commotion. We need to go. Now." They rode hard, taking back streets and alleys. At the town's edge, Tom and Pedro fell in beside them, rifles ready. Behind them, bells began to ring. Not the slow toll of worship, but the rapid clang of alarm. "Did you get them?" Eliza asked as they cleared the last houses. Cole patted his saddlebag. "Every last paper. You..." She held up the portfolio. "Something... haven't looked yet." They didn't stop until they reached a box canyon 5 miles out, where Lena waited with fresh horses, by lantern light. They examined their prizes. The church papers were everything the Reverend had promised: original water rights, land grants, proof that the Hart Ranch controlled the Little Sable's flow, legal documents that predated the town's incorporation, impossible to forge or deny. But the portfolio from Hale's desk was the real treasure. Letters in his own hand discussing the plan to kill her father, payment receipts to the man who spooked the horse, maps showing planned diversions of water to the mine, and most damning correspondence with territorial officials outlining bribes paid and promised. "This is it," Cole breathed. "This is enough to hang him." "If we can get it to honest law," Eliza reminded him. "He'll come after us with everything now." "Let him come." Cole's smile was fierce in the lamplight. "We've got truth on our side now, and sometimes that's enough to win." Looking at the papers spread before them, her father's legacy, proof of his murder, the key to justice. Eliza felt something shift inside her chest. For months she'd been running, reacting, letting Hale dictate the game. No more. "We make copies," she decided. "Send them to every newspaper in the territory. The governor, the federal marshal, everyone. Make it so public Hale can't bury it." She looked at her allies, Cole steady beside her. Lena grinning like a wild thing. Tom and Pedro standing guard. And then we go home. All of us. Let him come to us if he dares. The storm that had threatened all day finally broke. Rain washing the dust from the air. But Eliza didn't seek shelter. She stood in the downpour, face tilted to the sky, and for the first time in months, she felt clean. The hunt was over. Now it was time to fight. The full moon cast silver shadows across the canyon as Jonah Pike scrambled up the rocky trail, his breath coming in sharp gasps. He'd been exploring the upper reaches of Little Sable Creek for 2 days, following a hunch that started with discrepancies in the old survey maps. What he'd found changed everything. "Miss Eliza, Mr. Arden." He burst into the line shack where they'd made temporary headquarters. "You need to see this. Now." Cole looked up from cleaning his rifle. "Slow down, boy. What's got you so worked up?" Jonah pulled a rough sketch from his shirt. "I found it. Hale's secret. He's built a dam. Not a little one either, a real honest-to-God dam up in Devil's Bowl. He's diverting the whole upper creek." Eliza snatched the paper, studying Jonah's drawing. "That's why the water's been low. He's not just claiming water rights. He's stealing the actual water. There's more. Jonah gulped water from a canteen. I saw wagons heading up there. Construction supplies. They're making it bigger, permanent. Once that's finished, every ranch downstream will go dry. Cole stood. Decision made. We need to see this ourselves, tonight. While they think we're busy defending against that warrant, Lena, can you get word to the others? Lena nodded. I'll write within the hour. What do you need? Witnesses. The more people who see this, the harder it'll be for Hale to deny. Get whoever you can trust ranchers hurt by the water shortage. Townspeople with consciences. Tell them to meet us at Widow's Peak at midnight. As Lena prepared to leave, Eliza pulled her aside. Be careful, if Hale suspects. Honey, I've been fooling men like Hale since I was 15. He sees what he expects a saloon girl who knows her place. Don't worry about me. The ride to Widow's Peak tested even Juniper's sure footing. They went single file through narrow deer trails, Cole leading with the confidence of a man who'd scouted every inch of his territory. Behind them came Tom and Pedro, rifles ready. At the overlook, they found a surprising gathering. Not just the few Eliza had hoped for, but nearly 24 riders, the Henderson family, who'd been forced to sell out, the widow Martinez, whose cattle were dying of thirst, even Doc Sullivan, grim-faced in the moonlight. Heard you found something interesting, the doctor said. Thought I should see for myself. Brought my camera too, newfangled thing, but it takes a decent picture in good light. Cole dismounted, spreading Jonah's map on a flat rock. Devil's Bowl is about 2 miles up. Natural depression in the rocks, perfect for holding water. If Jonah's right, Hale's turned it into his private reservoir. Question is, Old Man Henderson spoke up. What do we do if it's true man like Hale doesn't give up easy? We document everything. Eliza said firmly, get proof he can't deny or destroy. Then we make it public, very public. They left the horses with guards and continued on foot, moving quiet as shadows through the pine forest. The sound reached them first, the hollow rush of falling water where no waterfall should be. Then they crested the ridge and saw it. The dam stretched across the narrow canyon like a scar. Not the rough work of a single season, but a structure built over years. Concrete and stone, sluice gates, even a watchman's shack perched above. Water pooled behind it in a small lake, moonlight turning the surface to molten silver. Mother of God, someone whispered. Must be millions of gallons up here. Doc Sullivan was already setting up his camera. Everyone stay still. This'll take a minute. While he worked, Cole and Eliza crept closer. Studying the construction, the sluice gates were closed tight, allowing only a trickle through. Below the dam, the creek bed was nearly dry. Look there, Tom pointed. Fresh wagon tracks led to a cleared area where construction supplies waited under canvas. They're not done, planning to make it bigger. Big enough to control every drop of water in the valley, Eliza said bitterly. No wonder he wanted my ranch. It's the last piece he needs. A shout echoed across the water. They'd been spotted. Lanterns bloomed on the dam as guards scrambled into action. Time to go, Cole ordered. Doc, you get that picture. Got 3, clear as day. The doctor was already packing his equipment. They retreated in good order, but the damage was done. By the time they reached the horses, they could hear pursuit organizing behind them. Worse, signal fires flared on distant ridges. Hale's network was mobilizing. Split up, Cole commanded. Henderson's, take the north trail. Doc, you and the others go east. Make sure those pictures get to safety. Tom, Pedro, with us. We'll draw them off. The chase that followed tested every skill Cole had taught Eliza. They rode hard through darkness, trusting their horses and luck in equal measure. Behind them, Doyle's voice roared orders as the pursuit spread out, trying to cut off escape routes. At Skeleton Ridge, they made their stand. Cole chose the ground well, a narrow passage where numbers wouldn't matter. When the first riders appeared, They were ready. "That's far enough," Cole called out. "Unless you want to explain to the territorial marshal why you're chasing law-abiding citizens on open range." Doyle's laugh was ugly. "Law-abiding? You're harboring a fugitive, Arden, and now you're all trespassing on mining company land." "Since when does the mining company own National Forest?" Eliza guided Juniper forward, letting moonlight reveal her face. "Hello, Ephraim. Lovely night for crime, isn't it?" "You little—" Doyle reached for his gun, but stopped as rifle barrels appeared along the ridgeline. Cole had positioned his men well. "I'd think careful about that next move," Cole said conversationally. "See, we've got witnesses now. Dozens of them. All saw your illegal dam, your water theft. Doc Sullivan got pictures too. Real clear ones." Even in moonlight, they could see Doyle's face darken. "You're lying." "Am I?" Eliza pulled out Jonah's map. "Devil's Bowl. Concrete dam, about 40 feet high. Sluice gates on the north side. Should I go on?" The standoff stretched taut. Then, from the darkness, more riders appeared. But instead of Doyle's men, these wore the honest faces of townsfolk. Word had spread from those who'd escaped. The banker Stevens, the school marm Miss Palmer, even some of Doyle's own miners. "What's this about a dam, Doyle?" Stevens called out. "That why my wells have been running dry." "And why you've been buying up water rights," another voice added. "Knowing you had the source locked up." Doyle looked around, calculating odds. He was outnumbered now, and worse, outnumbered by witnesses, people who'd talk, who'd spread the word. His hand moved away from his gun. "This isn't over," he snarled at Cole. "The sheriff will hear about this." "I'm counting on it," Cole replied. "Tell Hale we'll be in town tomorrow. High noon. Public meeting at the church. Time for some truth in Prospect Hollow." After Doyle's retreat, the group made camp rather than risk night travel. Around the fire, spirits ran high despite the danger. They'd struck a real blow against Hale's empire. "It's not enough," Eliza said quietly to Cole. They sat apart from the others, sharing coffee and cold biscuits. "He'll destroy those pictures if he can. Intimidate witnesses." "Maybe, but something's changed tonight. You see it?" He gestured to the mixed group around the fire. Ranchers and townspeople, miners and merchants, all talking, planning together. Hale's power came from keeping folks divided. She saw what he meant. The widow Martinez was explaining water law to the school marm. Henderson compared notes with a miner about well depths. Even Doc Sullivan, usually above town politics, was deep in discussion with the banker about territorial regulations. "My father tried to unite people," Eliza said. "Hale had him killed for it." "Your father didn't have proof of a secret dam, didn't have photographs, didn't have a daughter brave enough to risk everything for justice." Cole's hand found hers in the darkness. "We've got a chance here. Eliza, slim, maybe, but real." She turned her hand palm up, interlacing their fingers. "What happens after if we win?" "Then you rebuild your ranch, your life, your future, free and clear. And us." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I've been alone a long time. Thought I preferred it that way. Easier, safer. Then you crashed into my life, all fire and fury and courage." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not good with words, Eliza, but if you'd have me, after all this is done, I'd like to try to build something together." Before she could respond, Jonah appeared. "Riders coming? Friendly, it's Reverend Pike and Lena." The Reverend looked older, worn by the night's events, but his eyes held new determination. "I've been a coward," he announced to the gathering. "Hiding behind my collar while evil flourished. No more." He pulled papers from his coat. "The original land grants. All of them. I'm done keeping secrets that let tyrants prosper." Lena had her own news. Hale's called an emergency town meeting for tomorrow. Plans to have you all arrested for destruction of private property, inciting riot, whatever charges he can manufacture. Her smile was sharp. But two can play that game. I've got girls spreading word right now. Every soul in town will be at that meeting. And I mean everyone. Dawn was breaking as they prepared to descend. The mountains caught fire with morning light. And below, the valley spread green and gold despite the drought. Their valley, worth fighting for. You realize what we're doing? Cole asked as they mounted up. We're betting everything on truth winning over power. Eliza checked her Colt, then guided Juniper to face the rising sun. Then we'd better make it one hell of a truth. She looked back at the mixed band of rebels they'd forged in a single night. Ready to go shake up Prospect Hollow. The cheers that answered echoed off the canyon walls. They rode down together, ranchers and townspeople, workers and gentry united for the first time in common cause. And at the heart of it, a young woman who'd fled in a wedding dress now returned as a leader. The real fight was about to begin. The abandoned church on the outskirts of Prospect Hollow stood like a skeleton against the morning sky, its windows dark and empty as dead eyes. Built 20 years ago when the town had dreams of expansion, it now served only as a roost for owls and a reminder of failed ambitions. But today, it would witness something else entirely. They're coming. Tom called from his lookout position. Looks like half the town. Cole lowered his field glasses. More than half. I see wagons from as far as the Morrison spread. He turned to Eliza. You sure about this? She stood in the church doorway, wearing her father's coat and her mother's determination. Haley called for a public meeting. Let's give him one he won't forget. They'd worked through the night preparing. Reverend Pike had insisted on the abandoned church neutral ground. He called it where truth might have a fighting chance. Now, as the sun climbed higher, people converged from all directions. Lena appeared at Eliza's elbow. Hale's fit to be tied. Sent Doyle to secure the regular church, but folks just walked on by. Even got some of his own deputies curious enough to come see. The crowd grew. Families who'd been feuding for years stood side by side. Miners black with coal dust mixed with ranchers still smelling of cattle. Mrs. Engelman from the general store set up right next to the Chinese laundrymen Hale had tried to run out of town. Look at that, May marveled. 20 years I've lived here. Never seen anything like it. At exactly noon, Sheriff Royce Hale arrived with an armed escort. His face was thunderous as he took in the scene, his town, his people, gathering where he hadn't told them to. Caleb rode beside him, eyes bloodshot, hand twitchy near his gun. This is an illegal assembly, Hale announced, voice carrying across the crowd. Everyone here is ordered to disperse immediately. On whose authority? Reverend Pike stepped forward, and something in his bearing had changed. No longer the meek minister, but a man who'd found his backbone. This is a church, sheriff, a place of sanctuary, and these people have come to hear testimony. Testimony about what? Murder, theft, corruption. The Reverend's voice rang clear. Would you like me to be more specific? The crowd stirred. Murmuring, Hale's hand moved to his gun, but stopped as he realized how many rifles were visible. Not pointed, not threatening, just present. A reminder that the balance had shifted. 5 minutes, he ground out. Say your piece, old man. Then I'm arresting the lot of you. Reverend Pike nodded to Doc Sullivan, who came forward with a wooden box. From it, he produced photographs, holding them high for all to see. These were taken last night at Devil's Bowl. As you can see, someone has built a substantial dam across the Little Sable's headwaters, a dam that has been stealing water from every ranch and farm downstream. The crowd pressed closer, voices rising. Hale's face had gone pale. That's mining company property, Doyle blustered. We've got every right. Actually, you don't. Stevens, the banker, stepped forward, papers in hand. I've been reviewing the territorial records. That land was never sold to the mining company. It's federal territory. Building there without permits is a crime. Crime. Hale found his voice. Let's talk about crime. That woman, he pointed at Eliza, is a thief and a fugitive. There's a warrant. Based on false charges. Eliza moved to stand beside the Reverend. But we're not here to talk about your lies. Sheriff, we're here to talk about murder. She pulled out the leather portfolio taken from his house. These are your letters. Aren't they your handwriting? She held up a page. This one details payment to Jake Morrison. $500 to spook a horse. My father's horse. The murmur became a roar. Hale's deputies shifted nervously, suddenly unsure which side they were on. Forged, Hale shouted. All lies. Then you won't mind if we compare handwriting, Cole suggested. Plenty of your official documents in town. Should be easy to verify. While we're verifying, Lena added sweetly, maybe we should discuss these. She produced more papers. Receipts for bribes, signed and dated. Amazing what people keep when they think they're untouchable. The crowd was fully engaged now, passing documents hand to hand. Each revelation sparked new outrage. The Hendersons learned their well had been deliberately poisoned to force a sale. The Martinez family discovered their patriarch hadn't died of natural causes after refusing to sell water rights. Enough! Hale drew his gun, but before he could aim, Eliza's Colt was in her hand, steady as stone. I wouldn't, she said quietly. See, I learned something these past months. A bully's only as strong as the fear he creates. And folks here, they're done being afraid. She's right. Henderson stepped forward. Then another rancher. Then a miner. One by one, they formed a wall between Hale and the church. We're done. Royce, done with your threats, your theft, your murders. No, you can't do this, Hale's voice cracked. I'm the law here. No. A new voice spoke from the crowd. Deputy Marcus, one of Hale's own men, unpinned his badge. Law's supposed to protect people, not prey on them. I'm done too, huh? Other deputies followed suit, badges hitting the dirt like falling stars. Caleb made a desperate grab for his gun, but Jonah was faster. The boy's rifle centered on his chest. Don't, Jonah said simply. Please don't make me. The standoff stretched taut. Then, from the distance, came the sound of many horses, military horses, by their gate. The crowd parted as blue uniforms appeared a full cavalry unit, led by a man with silver eagles on his shoulders. Colonel Marcus Thorne, Territorial Authority. The officer announced. We received some interesting telegrams. Seems there's been allegations of corruption, murder, and water theft. His eyes found Hale. Serious allegations, with documentary proof. You have no jurisdiction, Hale started. Actually, I do. Water theft affecting federal lands. That's very much my jurisdiction. The colonel dismounted. Sheriff Hale, you're under arrest. You too, Mr. Doyle, and that young man who can't seem to keep his hand off his weapon. It happened fast. Soldiers moving with practiced efficiency, disarming Hale's remaining supporters. The sheriff himself tried to run, but Cole's lariat caught him neat as a calf at branding, dropping him face first in the dirt. Nice rope work, the colonel commented. Practice, Cole said modestly, as soldiers secured the prisoners. Reverend Pike found his way to the church pulpit. There's one more piece of business. The original water rights, as recorded in territorial documents. He held up the aged papers. These prove beyond doubt that the Hart Ranch holds senior rights to the Little Sable. All water diversions built after must give way. Meaning that dam comes down, the colonel confirmed. My engineers will see to it within the week. The crowd erupted in celebration, but Eliza stood apart, suddenly overwhelmed. Her father's murder would be answered. Her ranch was safe. The fight was over. So why did she feel so empty? Cole found her behind the church, sitting on an old grave marker. Hell of a thing you did in there. We did. All of us. She looked up at him. It's strange. I've wanted this for so long, and now... She gestured helplessly. He sat beside her, solid and warm. And now you have to figure out what comes next. Freedom's scary that way. When you're fighting to survive, you don't have to think about living. What about you? Will you go back to your ranch, your quiet life? Depends. He pulled something from his pocket, the silver star he'd given her. I believe this is yours. Keep it, she said. I don't need it anymore. No. She took a breath, gathering courage one more time. But I might need a partner, someone to help rebuild the Hart Ranch, someone who knows cattle and water rights and how to handle trouble. Interested. His smile was slow and warm as sunrise. Might be, though folks will talk. Unmarried woman taking on a business partner. Then maybe we should do something about the unmarried part. The words hung between them, surprising them both. Then Cole laughed, rich and genuine. Eliza Hart, is that a proposal? Maybe, unless you've got objections to marrying a woman who can outshoot you. You can't outshoot me. Care to bet on that? They were still arguing when Reverend Pike found them, the crowd having moved to the town church for what was turning into the biggest celebration Prospect Hollow had ever seen. There you are, he said, then paused, taking in their joined hands and foolish grins. I see. Well, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, we could make it official, unless you'd prefer to wait. Eliza thought about her failed wedding, the dress she'd run from, the desperate flight that had started everything. Then she looked at Cole steady, strong, seeing her as an equal, not a possession. Actually, Reverend, she said, I think we've waited long enough. The ceremony was nothing like the first one. No fancy dress, no forced smiles, no fear. Just two people standing in an abandoned church while their friends, their real friends, witnessed promises meant to be kept. Lena played her fiddle. May cried. Even the colonel stayed to watch. When Reverend Pike pronounced them married, the cheer could be heard all the way in town, but Eliza barely noticed, too focused on the man kissing her like she was precious and fierce and exactly where she belonged. So, Mrs. Arden, Cole said against her lips, ready to go home? Hart Arden, she corrected. And yes, let's go rebuild what's ours. As they walked out together, the abandoned church didn't seem abandoned anymore. Light streamed through broken windows, illuminating dust motes like dancing gold. Behind them, Hale was led away in chains, his empire crumbling. Ahead lay the ranch, the valley, a future they'd choose together. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected when a bride ran from her wedding. But then, the best stories rarely end the way they begin. Sometimes, you have to run in the wrong direction to find exactly where you belong. The sound of rushing water filled the valley like a hymn of redemption. 3 days after Hale's arrest, the Army engineers had blown the illegal dam, and the little Sable ran free again, its voice strong and clear as it carved its rightful path through the land. Eliza stood knee-deep in the restored stream, watching the water swirl around her boots. The Hart Ranch stretched before her, parched earth already drinking deep, preparing to green again. Behind her, Cole worked with the hands to repair irrigation channels damaged by months of drought. Never thought I'd see this day, Tom said, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. Water running where it should, Hale in custody awaiting trial, and you back home where you belong. Home. The word still felt strange on her tongue. The ranch house needed work. Hale's men had ransacked it during her absence, but the bones were strong, like everything her father had built. Mrs. Hart Arden. Jonah came riding hard from town. News from the territorial capital. She waded from the stream as he dismounted. The boy had grown in these past weeks. Shoulders broader, face more serious. War-aged people, even small wars like theirs. The judge reviewed all the evidence. Jonah reported breathlessly. Hale's been bound over for trial. Murder, conspiracy, water theft, bribery, the whole list. Doyle turned witness for the prosecution, says he'll tell everything if they spare him the rope. And Caleb, Cole asked, joining them. Charged as accomplice. He's claiming he knew nothing, but... Jonah shrugged. The prosecutor isn't buying it. Eliza felt no satisfaction, only a tired sort of justice. What about the town who's keeping order? They elected a new sheriff yesterday. Marcus, the deputy, who turned in his badge at the church. Folks trust him. Jonah grinned. Oh, and Lena's been made water commissioner. She's already drawing up fair distribution plans. Lena as water commissioner. Cole shook his head, amused. Hale must be spinning in his cell. They worked until sunset, when May rang the dinner bell. The long table in the Hart Ranch kitchen was crowded, now ranch hands who'd returned when news of Hale's fall spread. Neighbors who came to help rebuild, even some former miners looking for honest work. Feels like the old days, May said, serving up mountains of beef and beans. Your father used to have the hands eat with the family too. Said a man who wouldn't share your table shouldn't share your work. After dinner, Eliza and Cole walked the property line. The evening air was cool, scented with sage and the promise of rain. They paused at a small cemetery on a hill overlooking the valley. I used to come here to talk to him, Eliza said, touching her father's headstone. Tell him about the ranch. Ask advice. These last months, I was too ashamed. Felt like I'd failed him. You saved everything he built. How is that failure? I ran, that night of the wedding. I ran like a scared rabbit. Cole turned her to face him. You made a tactical retreat. There's a difference. You ran to fight another day, and that took more courage than standing still to be slaughtered. She leaned into his strength. They'd been married a week now, still learning each other's rhythms. He was quiet where she was fierce, steady where she was storm. Somehow, it worked. We've got another visitor coming, he said, pointing to a dust cloud on the road. Looks like the Reverend Pike had aged years in weeks, but seemed lighter for it. He accepted May's offer of coffee and settled on the porch with them as stars began to emerge. Thought you should hear this from me, he began. I'm leaving Prospect Hollow. Reverend, no, Eliza protested. The town needs you now more than ever. He smiled. The town needs someone younger, someone without my history of cowardice. I've recommended Jonah to the church board. He's young, but he's got the calling, and courage I never had. Where will you go? Cole asked. Santa Fe. There's a mission there that helps former slaves make their way west. Figured it was time I put my collar to better use. He pulled out an envelope. But first, I wanted to give you this. Your father left it with me years ago. Said to give it to you when you were ready to really run the ranch. Eliza's hands trembled as she opened it. Her father's handwriting, faded but clear. Asterisk. My dearest Eliza, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're facing the valley's wolves alone. I pray you're not alone, that you've found someone to stand beside you as your mother stood beside me. The ranch is yours, but more than land and water. I leave you this: our strength isn't in standing alone. It's in building community, creating bonds that men like Hale can't break. Be fierce in your friendships, generous in your justice. And remember, we don't bend knee, but we do extend hands. Trust the water. It always finds its way. All my love. Papa Asterisk. She read it twice, then passed it to Cole. He knew, somehow, he knew what would happen. He knew his daughter, the Reverend corrected. Knew you'd find a way. After he left, they sat in comfortable silence. The ranch was settling for the night horses nickering, cattle lowing, the creek singing its ancient song. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fences to mend, literally and figuratively, a trial to testify at, a community to rebuild. I've been thinking, Eliza said, About that school I mentioned, the night classes for folks who can't read. We could use the old bunkhouse, fix it up proper. Already planning to change the world again. Just our corner of it, she turned to him. What do you think about combining the ranches? Run them as one operation, we could bring more land under cultivation. Maybe even start that horse breeding program you mentioned. Cole considered. Makes sense, though we'd need more hands. Good ones. I know where to find them. All those folks Hale drove out. They'll come back if we make it worth their while. Fair wages. Shares in the profit, maybe. That's progressive thinking. That's survival. Hale fell because he tried to hoard everything. Water, land, power. But water's meant to flow, spread out, nurture things. She gestured to the valley. Silver under starlight. We share, we grow, we hoard, we die. A sound from the road drew their attention. Riders approaching, moving easy. Cole's hand went to his gun. Old habits dying hard. But Eliza recognized the lead horse. It's Lena. The new water commissioner arrived with 3 companions, the widow Martinez, Henderson, and surprisingly, Mrs. Engelman from the general store. Sorry to come so late, Lena said, but we've got a proposition. Mind if we sit? They gathered on the porch, May bringing out more coffee and slices of pie. Lena got straight to the point. We've been talking. All of us who've survived Hale's reign. We want to make sure nothing like that happens again. So we're proposing something new. A water cooperative. How would it work? Eliza asked. Henderson leaned forward. Each ranch, farm, and business gets shares based on historical use and acreage. But here's the key. No one person can own more than 20%. Decisions get made by vote. Maintenance costs get shared. Disputes get settled by committee. Not gunfire. It's radical, Mrs. Engelman admitted. Some folks say it's downright socialist, but after what we've been through, the widow Martinez finished. We know the old ways don't work. Strongman rule just means waiting for the next strong man to come along. Cole and Eliza exchanged glances. This was bigger than anything they'd imagined. Not just rebuilding what was, but creating something entirely new. The Hart Ranch water rights would be the cornerstone, Lena explained. You'd have the largest single share, but not control. In exchange, the cooperative would guarantee water for your expansion plans, help fund improvements. And if there's another drought, Cole asked, who gets cut first? Everyone shares the burden equally, proportional to their shares. We sink or swim together. It went against every tradition of the frontier, where individual strength and ownership were everything. But then, tradition had nearly destroyed them all. I need to think about it, Eliza said carefully. Discuss it with my husband. This is a big decision. Of course, Lena stood. Take your time. But remember, Hale's in jail. But there are always other Hales waiting. Only way to beat them is to stand together. After they left, Eliza and Cole walked down to the creek. The water ran cold and clear over her hands as she knelt on the bank. What would your father say? Cole asked. I think... She smiled, remembering the letter. I think he'd say we don't bend knee, but we do extend hands. The cooperative makes us partners, not subjects. It's a risk, giving up absolute control. Everything's a risk, but maybe it's time to try something new. She stood. Decision made. Besides, I've got you to watch my back if it goes wrong. He pulled her close. Always. Though I think you do pretty well watching your own back. We do better together. They stood there as the moon rose, casting silver paths on the water. Somewhere in town, Hale sat in a cell awaiting judgment. Somewhere beyond the mountains, new challenges gathered like storm clouds. But here, now, the water ran free and the land breathed easy. Come on, Eliza said finally. Early morning tomorrow, fences to mend, a school to plan, a future to build. Sounds like a full life. The fullest. As they walked back to the house, hand in hand, the lamp May had lit in the window guided them home. It would burn all night, a beacon for anyone who needed shelter, needed hope, needed to believe that sometimes the wrong direction leads exactly where you need to go. The little sable sang its water song, and the valley listened, and everything that had been broken began, slowly, to heal. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, with the kind of golden light that made the valley look like a painting. 6 months had passed since Hale's arrest, 6 months of rebuilding and renewal. And now the Hart Arden Ranch was ready to celebrate properly. "Hold still," May scolded, adjusting the simple ivory dress Eliza wore. "I swear you're worse than when you were running from that first wedding." "That's because I was running from it," Eliza laughed. "This time I'm running to it." The dress was nothing like her mother's elaborate gown. This one was practical cotton with just a touch of lace, something she could work in if needed. Because even on her wedding day, her real wedding day, there was work to be done. Through the window, she could see the preparations, tables set up under the cottonwoods, wildflowers gathered by the school children she'd been teaching, sides of beef turning on spits. The whole valley had been invited, and it seemed the whole valley had come. "You know," Lena said, entering with a crown of desert roses. "Most folks have the wedding before they live together for 6 months. Most folks aren't us," Eliza replied. "Besides, we were married proper at the church. This is just—" "A real celebration," May finished. "The kind your papa would have thrown." A knock at the door interrupted them. Cole's voice came through, warm with amusement. "You decent in there got something that needs your attention." Eliza opened the door to find her husband, how that word still thrilled her, standing with a telegram. His own wedding clothes were simple but fine clean black suit, string tie, the silver star she'd returned to him pinned to his vest. "From the territorial capital," he said, handing her the message. She read it quickly, then again, slower. "The Federal Water Act passed. Our cooperative is officially recognized as the legal water authority for the valley." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "We did it. We actually did it." "You did it," he corrected, pulling her close despite May's protests about wrinkling the dress. "You and that magnificent stubborn streak." Outside, they could hear Reverend Jonah Pike now warming up for the ceremony. His young voice carried across the ranch, greeting arrivals, calming pre-wedding nerves. He'd grown into his calling these past months, becoming the spiritual leader the valley needed. "Time to go," May announced. "Cole, out. It's bad luck to see the bride before—" "Already married, May," he reminded her. "Don't care. Traditions are traditions. Git." Alone again with her chosen sisters. Eliza took a breath. Through the window, she could see the life they'd built. The schoolhouse, complete with real desks and a library. The expanded corrals where their horse breeding program was already showing promise. The neat rows of the cooperative garden where families grew food together. And everywhere, people, the Hendersons, rebuilding after years of fear. The widow Martinez, teaching young women to shoot at the range they'd established. Doc Sullivan, setting up his camera to capture the day. Even some of Hale's former miners, now working honest jobs and sending for their families. "Your father would be so proud," May said softly. "I hope so." Eliza touched the window glass. "I kept his dream but made it bigger, made it ours instead of mine." The music started Lena on her fiddle, joined by guitars and a harmonica. Not fancy, but joyful. Eliza walked out of the house to find the path lined with neighbors throwing dried lavender and sage. Their faces told the story of the valley's transformation. Hope replacing fear. Community replacing isolation. Cole waited by the creek, under an arch of woven branches. Behind him, the little sable ran strong and clear, its voice a constant song of persistence. When their eyes met across the distance, his smile was everything she'd never known she wanted. Young Reverend Jonah performed the ceremony with touching sincerity. This time, when he asked if anyone objected, the question brought laughter instead of tension. When he pronounced them husband and wife again, the cheer could probably be heard in town. "Now comes the best part," Cole murmured against her lips. "The party." And what a party it was. Tables groaning with food, children running between the dancers, music that switched between waltzes and wild reels. Eliza danced with everyone: Tom, Pedro, each of the cooperative members, even shy young men from town who'd never have dared approach her in the old days. But she always came back to Cole, drawn like the creek to its bed. As sunset approached, she found herself standing with the widow Martinez, watching the teenagers race horses in the lower pasture. "My granddaughter wants to ride like you," the widow said. "Wants to wear trousers and shoot guns and speak her mind in meetings. And I tell her be like Senora Hart Arden, but be smart too. The world's changing, but not everywhere, not all at once." It was true. Letters from other territories told of women still fighting for basic rights, of range wars and water feuds that ended in blood. Their valley had become an exception, not the rule. "Eliza," Lena called. "Get over here. We've got something for you." The crowd parted to reveal a gift, a new sign for the ranch gate. Wrought iron worked into beautiful scrollwork. Hart Arden Ranch and Water Cooperative. All welcome who come in peace. "It's perfect," Eliza breathed. "There's more." Henderson stepped forward. "We've all talked, and we want to expand the school. Make it a real institution. Bring in teachers, offer courses in everything from reading to agriculture to law." His weathered face creased in a smile. "Name it after your father, if you're willing. The James Hart Valley School." The tears came then. Impossible to stop. Her father's dream, growing beyond anything he'd imagined. Cole's arm came around her, steady as always. "I think he'd like that," she managed. As night fell, lanterns bloomed throughout the ranch. The party showed no signs of slowing, if anything. The music got wilder, the laughter louder. This was what victory looked like, not just defeating an enemy, but building something better in the ruins. "Walk with me," Cole asked. They slipped away from the celebration, following the creek up to their favorite spot, a bend where willows made a private grove, the same place he'd proposed properly, the night after the cooperative was signed into law. "No regrets?" he asked, pulling her close. "About which part?" "Running from my wedding. Becoming an outlaw, starting a revolution. Marrying a difficult man who argues with me about horse bloodlines." "You started that argument. You finished it. We both finished it." His voice dropped to that tone that still made her shiver. "If I recall correctly." She laughed, free and happy. "No regrets. Not one. You." "Only that it took so long to find you." They stayed there as the stars came out, listening to their valley celebrating below. Soon enough, there would be challenges. The railroad was coming, bringing new opportunities and new threats. Other territories were watching their water cooperative with interest and concern. And somewhere, there were always men like Hale, waiting for their chance at power. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, there was music and laughter, community and hope. Tonight, a woman who'd run in desperation had found her way home, bringing a whole valley with her. "Dance with me," Cole said suddenly. "Here, just us." There was no music but the creek and the distant fiddle, but they danced anyway, slow and close, making their own rhythm. Her mother's dress was long gone, her father's ranch transformed, but somehow she felt them both in this moment, in the love that built rather than destroyed, in the community that protected rather than exploited. "I love you," she said against his chest, "in case I haven't mentioned it today." "Only a dozen times. I was starting to worry." She pulled back to swat him, saw his grin, and kissed him instead. They were still learning this balance, when to fight, when to yield, when to stand together against the world. But they were learning it together, and that made all the difference. A shout from below caught their attention. Someone had brought out fireworks, probably ordered from the Chinese workers who'd helped build the cooperative dam system. Colors exploded across the sky, reflecting in the water, painting the valley in light. "We should get back," Eliza said reluctantly.
"In a minute."
Cole held her tighter.
"Let them celebrate. We've got our whole lives for parties."
She settled into his arms, watching the fireworks paint stories across the dark. Somewhere up there. She liked to think her parents watched too, seeing their daughter not as the desperate bride who'd run that morning, but as the woman who'd run back to fight for everything that mattered. The music swelled. Voices raised in an old song about water and land and love that lasted. And there, by the creek that had seen so much sorrow and now witnessed so much joy, Eliza Hart-Arden knew she was exactly where she belonged. The wrong direction had led her home after all. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, courage, and justice in the Old West. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss what this tale meant to you. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Night now. Like this video, and hit that hype button to help more people discover these tales of the American frontier. Your support means everything and helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, partners.